뒤에 보고 하세요.
아, 위요.
Should I start?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we are in this house debating on how this house would actually abolish the admission officer system, and we on the opposition strongly believe that the government today actually conveys a wrong understanding of the motion we have at hand. Now, before I go on to the rebuttals or the actual arguments that our opposition have, I would like to start with a brief and blunt introduction. Now, we all came here due to a pseudo, let's say, admission officer system. Among the 3 interviewers that we have faced prior to our actual enrollment into the school, one admission officer believed in our talent, believed in our potential, believed in the beam in our eyes. And here we are right now, growing internally and also externally into more future society of this globalized nation and globalized society as a whole. But however, ladies and gentlemen, what the government today is actually arguing is to abolish the system itself. Now, as I've mentioned, throughout my life, I believe that abolish is a very harsh word itself. Now, to go on to the rebuttals of the actual government argument, now the Prime Minister came out and said that the admission officer system focused on mainly extracurricular activities, self-introductory essays. And then the Prime Minister continued her speech and pointed out that these standards are actually bad because, well, most of all, because they actually provoke or induce more private education in the status quo. However, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to point out, if the Prime Minister herself actually mentioned that we are going to maintain the actual personal interviews that are actually going in college throughout, and also the GPA standards, how are we actually going to reduce private education? Because what the government is trying to convey right now is just reducing the portion of what we call as interviews in our whole admission system itself. And if we're not going to actually ban the interviews themselves, how are we going to actually reduce the private education invested into those realms? Moreover, we'd like to continue on that while the Prime Minister and the government itself sort of emphasize on how we should convey on what we learn in science class, do colleges actually pick students that are perfect memorizers? Now, we're not trying to disrespecting what is learned inside the classroom, but when we go into secondary school and high school, what we basically learn is how the basic knowledge of what we should do and what we should enhance on in college. And so the basic criteria on what we should later evaluate on and improve on and make it into our own work. But however, ladies and gentlemen, most of these methods mostly rely on memorization, standardized tests, and not actually the extracurriculars or the individual talents of these students that we are trying to pick these very talented students. And also, the Prime Minister sort of pointed out that HSK test is bad, and yet the essay writing is sort of good. But however, ladies and gentlemen, these both actually require private education. These both require investment. And the classes that are provided inside the secondary schools themselves do not actually sufficiently back up essay writing or neither the HSK. We would just like to point that out for them. And now, moving on to our actual arguments, we on the opposition side would like to mainly focus on 3 points. We would like to, first of all, I as the leader of the opposition would like to say about the necessity of the status quo, why we need the efficient admission officer system right now. Second of all, I would like to talk about the social trend of globalization and what we need in this whole world. Our third speaker, the Deputy Prime Minister, will talk about our third point, which is basically the meritocracy and also why the school should actually maintain the system to pick the students. And then we have our work. Now, I would like to talk about how this current status quo admission officer system is actually a necessity. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we have emphasized before, standardized tests are not enough. We're not trying to disrespect GPA. We believe that GPA also conveys a separate meaning in our what we do in school, because having a good GPA is also sort of good, beneficial in a way. But however, we're trying to say that the admission officer system will actually better convey the point that is not actually conveyed in the GPA. We would go beyond that, extracurricular activities, and as they have said, self-introductory essays and such on. Now, we believe that standardized tests, focus on standardized tests themselves, are actually centralizing the education to grades only. And we believe that while the Prime Minister sort of came up and pointed out that our system, our admission officer system, would actually bring more private education, their system is not an exclusion, ladies and gentlemen. GPA needs time and investment. We're not just trying to say that we only need classes inside the school, but there is also a trend that sort of centralized sort of private education that we can actually see in South Korea itself. Moreover, as we mentioned before, it might convey the wrong message of grades equals everything. However, in our system, ladies and gentlemen, we would respect individual talents of each and every individual student. We would require the character that is important in our globalized and modernized 21st century. Because GPA don't tell how that person is, doesn't actually tell the honesty or the genuinity of that individual person, ladies and gentlemen. And we believe that admission officer system is sufficient enough to actually propose to actually convey or portray the individual character of this system. Now, moving on, we would like to also say that there is a social trend at the hand of globalization and modernization in the 21st century. And admission officer system would actually sufficiently require the students to be more adequate to go out to the globalized world and be more sufficient and convey a more stronger voice in this society. Now, we believe that each individual student must fully utilize their talents. They need to know how to cooperate, they need to know how to be honest, and they need to know how to convey leadership. Now, admission officer systems, let's say, it shows admission officer systems as a whole actually emphasize on the individual speaking and also writing skills, ladies and gentlemen. The Prime Minister also recognized that too. Now, speaking, well, it doesn't actually mean you have to be an extrovert to actually be a good speaker. You just have to convey, just have to show your true meaning, show your genuinity to your admission officer, show your talent, what you have, what you differentiate from other students, and what you actually have in your passion of your heart. And we believe that, for example, let's say that President Obama, he was born in the slums. He was not exactly an 8th grade student. But yet, we're not trying to say Obama was actually selected in the admission officer system, but right now, as the President of the United States, he is conveying hope into each and every one of the citizens' hearts. He is trying to convey a message of how we should grow as global leaders, how we should So by following this motion, would you actually just respect the blood, sweat, and tears of the present and potential students that would actually be picked from this admission officer system? Or would you side with the opposition today and actually respect the students? We beg to oppose.